and welcome back to Conversations with Olwen. This episode will ruffle some feathers. Some people won't agree with what I'm going to say, and that's perfectly fine. But all I can say is that I've lived this and this is my experience. In the last episode, I referred to my eldest Jake starting school. I talked about how much he stood out. His dysregulation was obvious. It was significant in a cohort of peers 2 decades ago. And I think that's why I'm really interested in that area now as a speech pathologist and why I have specialised in it over the last 2 decades of my career, and that is kids' executive function skills. I've seen over the last 2 decades children's executive function skills including their memory for language, skills including their regulation of themselves, physically, emotionally and mentally, become so much more impaired. I've watched this happen as a mum, but also as a speech pathologist. This is not just an issue with our children's speech and language skills. I've seen our children's basic brain development regress. I've seen their regulation of self change. And let me tell you, this is not just an issue with screen time. As I said, I'm a mum who did kindy and daycare drop-offs many, many, many years ago, over 20 years ago. I was in classrooms 20 years ago working. They're very different places now. And I can honestly say when my eldest Jake went to kindy and school, he stood out. Let me say that again. He stood out. He'd been struggling for years. Daycare didn't work. He couldn't cope with the noise in the big centre. So we moved into a smaller family daycare environment, which suited his needs absolutely perfectly. But he still struggled. But let me share some statistics with you. I looked up the data out of interest when doing my research for this podcast. In the year 2000, when my eldest Jake was born, and the years afterwards, 91% of mums were not working in Australia. I repeat, 91% of mums were not working. So only 9% of Australian families had both parents working consistently long hours out of the home. Cost of living was low back then, mortgages were low, food bills were low, utilities were low, access to sport for our children, dance, swimming, football, soccer, ballet, art, music, you name it. It was more affordable than it is now. Mums did not have to make that choice. Families did not have to make that choice about can we afford to keep someone at home. The vast majority were not working full-time. They were not struggling and juggling, as so many families are now, trying to fit it all in, trying to fit in extracurricular activities, sport, the children's reading, their homework, their maths tasks. They were able to stay at home and look after their children. What I'm hearing nowadays from so many mums is that they have no choice. Mums who would love to be at home, mums who would love to be able to afford to stay at home with their little ones, but they can't. They're working full-time, long hours. And there's no judgment over here. I'm a mum that's had to work too, through all 3 of my pregnancies. But 2 decades ago when Jake started school, there was probably only 2, 3, maybe 4 mums at the most in his class who worked. So that means 91% of kids aged 0 to 5 were at home with a parent at the very least, a good few days a week. And I 100% believe this is another factor impacting on our children's outcomes and on their brain development. Both parents are now working. Both parents are now struggling and juggling. Our kids are less connected than before. Our parents have less time with them than ever before. And our little boys aren't at home. They're not at home with a connected caregiver getting cuddles and kisses on their ouchies when they're hurt or they fall over, being read to, being played with or sung with, doing all of the daily jobs around the home or popping around the corner to see Aunt Jenny and their cousins or up to the library for story time. Jonathan Haidt called us an anxious generation. Well, I don't believe that our children are anxious. I think our children are dysregulated. We have more and more children presenting with hyperactivity, impulsivity, sensitivity. We have more children presenting with anxiety, inattention, poor self-regulation, be it mentally, physically, verbally, emotionally. Both parents are working, both parents are stressed, parents are time poor. Imagine more children being at home with parents during those critical period of brain development. That talk, read, play, that Martha Burns, the American speech pathologist, talks about. Harvard University tells us how important serve and return is for the connectivity of these little developing brains, yet our children aren't getting it. And Dr. Jack Shonkoff, known as a world-renowned pediatrician, talks about how critical the early years is. It's a period when the internal architecture of our children's brains are developing. These days, many parents report, and other therapists I'm speaking with more and more do too, about how there's just a lot of serve and not a lot of return in the early years. Put your shoes on, Billy. Stand in line, Billy. Get out of the tree, Billy. Go and play at the sandpit, Billy. Put your hat on. Have you got your sun cream on, Billy? Get your lunchbox and get in line. Our early care in this country has become routine-driven. It's not, where is that dinosaur, Billy? Did he go over the volcano or is he in the volcano? Oh, no, he's in the lava. Oh, no, the lava's boiling hot. Come on, Billy, let's go back into the room. Let's go and get that big green army helicopter and let's go save our dinosaur. So Dr. Carolyn Cole is a South Australian speech pathologist who presented a number of years ago now a paper called Cycle of Silence at a Speech Pathology Australia conference. And in this paper, she made an observation, and it's one that we're seeing right now here in Australia, right across Australia, and speech pathologists are seeing it too. We're seeing children in our daycare centres exhibiting this very particular language behaviour. I spoke to Dr. Cole about it a few years later because I was so interested in it and because it reflected what I was hearing in my clinic and have been hearing now for many, many years. And basically the cycle goes like this. Early care is very routine driven. Billy, put your hat on. Billy, put your shoes on. Billy, go and get your lunch bag. Billy, get in line because we've got to walk over here to orders are given in early care. Instructions. There are instructions to follow. It's business talk. Business talk takes over. It minimises the real interactions. Children eventually don't expect interactions because little Betty, who's been trying to tell her educator for the last 2 weeks about her new cat, Paws, who's got black paws and a little black spot, because she doesn't get any interaction about it, she learns to make less interaction demands. And there turns into this huge culture shift where everything is just business talk. It's all we have time for. And children actually withdraw from interactions. This is something we hear from parents all of the time in our clinic, whereby they will go to childcare for a couple of days a week and they withdraw from interactions. They're home for a few days and their interactions, their engagement, their language, their output increases, and then the cycle begins again. Now, many of you may not have had any interactions with children adopted from overseas, but I have worked with many in my career. And these little people display very similar features in their language behaviour. Now, a really interesting story that a few of these mums have told me is that when they first met their little one, they were in a giant-sized cot filled with babies, up to 10 little toddlers or babies in a cot. And they had a bottle of milk, except it wasn't a normal bottle of milk. It was like a thickened milk. It was thickened with a bit of porridge. And they cut the end off the teat to make the bottle a lot bigger so that the porridge could flow through it a lot easier. And guess why they did that? They did it because it saved time. It lessened the interaction that the children needed. It kept costs low. And it keeps the children quiet with a full belly all day. Now, Dr. Cole's paper and this theory of the cycle of silence, in my opinion, to a lesser degree, describes the impact on our children's language skills. But I'm going to take it a step further, and I'm actually going to say that this en masse childcare concept here in Australia is significantly impacting on our children's brain development during the most critical period of brain development. Now, I'm not saying that Australian children are experiencing conditions that are this extreme, but they are definitely experiencing neurological decline that this type of en masse care causes. En masse care places stress and pressure on educators. Our children are missing out. Our children's speech and language skills and literacy levels are plummeting. I believe this is another reason why. Parents have to work, but in many cases, care is substandard. But back to another really important factor. You know, we're all talking about domestic violence. We're all talking about it everywhere you look. So why are we not taking better care of our little boys, our vulnerable, at-risk little boys, our boys that are anxious, hypervigilant, our boys that have very strong attachments and need connection and care, our little boys who struggle to regulate and are misunderstood, are labelled as the naughty boys, and they're not cared for. They need people on staff who get them. The transition of staff and the experience of staff caring for children in these centres needs to be changed. There is no chance to build relationships or connect with a carer who is constantly changing. Children are often left with someone they're not familiar with when parents have to run to work early. No connection, limited relationships, limited serve and return. And let's face it, these places often do not have enough space for the number of children that are in there, for them to run around, for them to roam free, for them to move and to get the physical exercise that they need to build their developing brain. I clearly remember driving through a very well-known disadvantaged area in Brisbane a few years ago, and I passed a small shopping plaza, you know, the type of shopping plaza where they've got a fish and chip shop, a Chinese store, a laundromat, a little video store. But what really shocked me was I saw tucked in between these tiny shops was the entrance, a childcare centre belonging to one of Australia's biggest childcare providers. The area was tiny. It was so small. And I couldn't believe that somebody had sought this out and actually approved this location as a childcare centre. In that small centre alone, they're making millions of dollars a year. But what about the damage they're doing to the kids in there, in that tiny, unstimulating environment, and the flow-on effects that we will be paying for generations to come? Their basic brain development, their regulation, and let's face it, their mental health. How were your early years spent? Were you stuck within four walls in a small, conditioned area that stayed the same? Unfamiliar carers who changed, who you had limited connection with every day of your early life? Is that what your early years looked like? Or were you at home? Were you at home with your mum, with your siblings? Were you playing in your backyard? Did you have the hose out? Were you putting dishwashing liquid on the trampoline and slipping and sliding on it? Were you cooking with mum, doing the washing with mum? Were you going and visiting friends whose mums were at home too, getting cuddles, feeling loved and cared for with constant interaction and loads of talk? I also want you to, when thinking about your own childhood, I want you to think about the screen time that you had. And that's your homework until my next episode. I feel like I didn't get it right with my eldest son. I feel like I didn't have a choice. I went back to work. I was a single mum, but I do regret it. He was very dysregulated and he was really busy and he definitely needed me more. He needed more engagement. He needed more connection and more of that one-to-one care. And I firmly believe that he struggled more in his early years because I didn't give him that enough. I said at the beginning that this podcast series is going to be real, it's going to be controversial. I'm going to share things that I would do differently when given the chance. Don't forget your homework. Thank you for listening to Conversations with Olwen. If you know somebody who needs to hear this episode today, please share it with them. Until next time.